So welcome everyone to the CSA Chef Demo Tackling Veg Overload. We're excited to host this today. My name's Katie Harvey. I'm Oak's CSA Program Coordinator in charge of the Kentucky Farm Share Coalition. I'm joined today by Natalie Ryder. She is the Organic Association of Kentucky's Assistant Director, and she will be helping us with technical support. So if you have any questions during the demo, feel free to message her directly. And we are excited to partner with Chef and Program Manager, Chef Tanya Whitehouse. She's going to be leading us through this demo today and showing off a ton of great recipes from the Food Connection at University of Kentucky. And we'll start with a quick intro. We'll get right into the demo and talk about, we're going to have a featured recipe of stuffed summer squash roll-ups, but Chef Tanya has a lot of other recipes to kind of highlight and mention as other ideas to kind of maximize produce this time of year. And then we'll really talk and dive into freezing summer vegetables and freezing seasonal produce in general and talk about some best tips and practices for that, as well as mention some other food preservation methods that you can consider. And then we'll have time at the end for Q&A. So we'll try to get to the Q&A, have about 10 minutes for that. This event is being recorded. So if you need to jump off early, we'll send out the recording with some other resources, our recipe handout, and a follow-up email to you. And we just ask that everyone remain on mute during the demo. Drop any questions you have into the chat. We'll try to get to those in real time, or we'll save some of the questions for the end for the Q&A. And if folks, I want to start with just a quick intro to the Organic Association of Kentucky. We're a partner on this event. Our focus, we're a statewide nonprofit. We work to promote organic regenerative agriculture across Kentucky. We're really focused on improving the health of the environment as well as our community. We work to provide technical assistance to farmers. We do that with one-on-one transition support, farmer field days, like in the picture we have here, in our annual farming conference. We also help Kentucky eaters find and connect with farms in their area and get more local organic food. So we have our online Oak Find a Farm directory that you can check out to find oak farms in your area. We also have lots of classes like this that we offer, as well as other kind of in-person events to check out. And this event today is specifically a part of our workplace CSA program, the Kentucky Farm Share Coalition. So I just wanted to highlight that program for you all. We work with farms all across Kentucky to bring in weekly vegetable boxes to workplaces. And we help employers incentivize those weekly boxes as a way to kind of improve healthy eating habits, improve long-term wellness, and offer even incentives towards those shares. So to offer a discount on those weekly shares to kind of encourage people to give it a try, check out CSA, as well as just kind of find better access to fresh food. So we offer that program throughout the season, and this demo is in support of that. So we hope that lots of folks joining us today are workplace CSA members or CSA members, and just wanted to highlight that. And so this year we're working with 8 farms. We've connected over 800 CSA members to 20 plus weeks of organic produce, which is really exciting. And I'm going to pass it off now to Chef Tanya. She's going to share a little bit about the Food Connection before we get started and do a recipe highlight, and then we'll dive right in.
Hey, thank you so much for that intro, Katie. Well, this has been a fun one to plan because this is that time of year, right? The height of growing season, and we are being inundated. I just stopped by the farmers market on Sunday, and boy, was there a lot to choose from. So I'm going to push as much stuff in this as I can. I'm stuffing this full, and we're going to talk about stuffing a lot of stuff today. And then we're going to talk about vegetables. We're here in the Food Connection Learning Kitchen. So we try to serve everyone along the food chain. So farmers, producers, eaters, distributors, and we're here on the campus, so we try to serve students, faculty, staff, and hoping that people will learn about and become more engaged with their local food. We have lots of people doing a lot of hard work in the background. I'm more of the front-facing piece of this, and I get to do lots of fun demos and cooking classes with gorgeous local food. We have Dr. Ashton Carter-Wright and Dr. Krista Jacobson, who are directing our programming and all of the work we do in value chain coordination and technical assistance. And they keep a lot of plates spinning in the background. And we have our Cultivate Kentucky team of Brian Brady and Courtney Bartlett, who go out on farm to offer that technical and safety assistance out on farm to get farmers ready for gap audits so that they can then be in the wholesale pipeline. And then we now have 3 value chain coordinators in 3 different areas of the state, West, Central, and East. That is Brandy Button Johnson, Faye Kuzman, and Heather Graham. And they are working from their own towns in those areas to try to connect growers, distributors, buyers, and get more and more of our small and mid-sized farmers into the food system here in Kentucky. So we're trying to work statewide now. I think we can skip the next slide. I sort of did this backwards, but that's how we do it sometimes. We'll jump into the demo because we've got a lot to cover in a short amount of time. Love to say hello to all the people who are joining us today. I see some familiar faces, so welcome back. And to all of those joining us for the first time, this is a great audience. We love to bring you in. We'll try to answer as many questions as we have. We may just shoot you some links to some resources because we are limited on time, but we'll try to answer as many as possible. If you want to put a question in the chat or even unmute and shout out, just let me know. I'll try to go through it while we're doing this as well. So you have already in your handout that's been put in the chat, a recipe for stuffed summer squash or rolled summer squash, also called rollatini, if you've ever seen that. It's a pretty simple recipe. I've got a couple of beautiful little tiny zucchini here from Lazy Egg Farm. And you can do this either way. I'm going to take off the stem end and a little bit of that squash blossom end. We'll talk about those in a minute. I want to stop this from rolling on myself. So I'm going to take off a slice, very thin slice on the side, and then I can make little teeny tiny slices. Now, if you should have some equipment to do this with, like a mandolin, like I have right here, you can get your slices nice and thin and even. So I'm not going to go over this, but it's an easy way to get those really thin slices that are nice and even. You want them about 1/8 of an inch or thinner. And we're going to roast them off so that they'll get a little bit smaller. And that's pretty easy too. So we take a sheet pan, trying to get this in the camera. My camera is kind of in a different position today. We're going to take this sheet pan. I have lined it with parchment, and I'm going to just drizzle a little bit of olive oil on it. And take a pastry brush or something, and you can use whatever you've got at hand, pastry brush or just even your hand, and kind of smear your olive oil around. And then we're going to lay those slices on your sheet pan. Give them plenty of room. They're going to steam a bit. Zucchini is very watery. They're going to steam. Yellow squash is very watery, just the same. So we're going to give them a lot of room. We're going to put just a little bit more olive oil on top and brush that around so that it's kind of even. And then we'll do a pinch of salt and a pinch of pepper. And we're going to pop that into a 375-degree oven. And now it depends on the size. You can use whatever size squash that you have. These small ones go pretty quick. So I think we checked on those at about 8 minutes when we were prepping this ahead. I do have some already prepared that we'll start with. And bigger squash might take up to about 12 minutes. Just keep checking them. You want them just tender enough that they'll roll. So you can just kind of take a fork and lift one up. And if it moves around pretty easily, kind of like an al dente noodle, then you've got your squash in the perfect tenderness for this recipe. Now I've got right here in your recipe, we've got ricotta. Now I didn't actually have ricotta, so I took some cottage cheese and zhuzhed it in a food processor. So we have kind of a hacked ricotta. Now cottage cheese is a little saltier. Ricotta tends to be sweet, so I really watched how much salt I added to this. To this, we added some chopped up fresh mozz, and you could use any medium melty cheese like Asiago or provolone or something like that. We've got a little parm in here, and then some herbs, some basil, a little bit of oregano, a little bit of thyme, and then I have chopped up some of my blanched veg. I've got some kale in here. I even added some sun-dried tomatoes and a little bit of fresh tomato and some of my squash that was a little too thick to roll. Now, when we get ready to roll our cooked squash, we just lay it out flat. And I'm going to go ahead and prepare my pan that, or my baking dish that this is going to go into. We'll try to see what 6 does. So whatever your baking dish is, you're going to put a little bit of tomato sauce in the bottom. If you don't have tomato sauce, conversely, you could just spray it really well with some. Yeah. But I'm going to coat the bottom of that because this is a cheesy mixture. So I want to make sure that we're covering the bottom with some of this sauce. And then I'm going to, and I recommend, this can get a little messy. So I don't have to stop and wash my hands 5 times during this demo. I'm going to put on some gloves for this process. Now in there, you do add 1 egg to your cheese mixture. Think of it like the ricotta mixture in the middle of a lasagna. So you want to taste your mix before you add the egg in for seasoning to make sure you don't need any more salt or pepper. If you feel like it needs a little brightness, you can always put a little lemon zest in there, which I have done as well. And to get your rolls, basically you do a little dollop on the end of your squash and then kind of smear it. Okay, a dollop and a smear, and then you roll it up. If you have really thin squash, you get these nice little rosettes. Mine's a little bit thick for today, but we've got some nice rolls though. And what I do is I just kind of press the seam side against the edge of my baking dish. And yes, I'm doing this in a tiny one today. But you could do larger squash and you could do it in, I mean, if you want to feed a large family, you could do it in a 9x13. You can also, I'd like to point out, I mean, I know a lot of people are trying to use up zucchini and squash right now, but there's also a lot of eggplant out there. You may be receiving a lot of that in your shares. You could do this with eggplant. You could also roast and split bell peppers and roll them up this way. Anything that you can slice thin and that will get fairly tender when you par cook it would be great for this. You can also not even roll it and kind of do it like a lasagna in layers. And you can add what you normally do to lasagna, but use the vegetables as your noodles. And we're going to do a couple more. We want to put enough in here so that they rest against each other enough to prevent them from unrolling while they bake. So this marinara is a very simple one, and we use fresh tomatoes on it. I know I saw some people say, oh, what do we do with all these tomatoes? It's just fresh tomatoes and a little bit of onion and a little bit of garlic. And now that is your basic sauce. If you want to make it a marinara, you could add some dried or fresh basil. You could add a little oregano. You could add your Italian blend, rosemary, some thyme, or you could leave it plain, especially if you're going to preserve it for later and you don't know what you're going to use it for. And that way you could zhuzh it up in a lot of different ways. We're going to talk about that in just a second. So this is how it goes in. I'm going to place it on a sheet pan so that it won't boil over or bubble over. And magic of TV, when it comes out, it looks something like this. Now I have put a little bit of extra parm on top. You can do that in the last few minutes of cooking. And so you do get these nice little rosettes. And to serve out, you just start scooping out the rolls. Don't worry if they fall apart when you're serving them. The egg should help the filling bind everything together a little bit, but sometimes it may not. If you do individual servings like this. I will say one nice way to serve them. This is the only fancy schmancy kind of napkin that I know how to fold. I can't do like the New Zealand Opera House or anything like that. This is the artichoke fold, and it's great if you have a hot dish and you're putting it on another plate to serve, so people don't have to touch the hot dish. So whatever you're serving, individual servings fit right down in there on the main plate. And then you could take that away if this were a first course, and then you have your charger plate underneath. All right, so that's dish number one.
Chef Tanya, that looks so good. We got a yum in the chat for that one, which is great. And I just want to, I know you topped that one with fresh parm. We shared a photo yesterday. Was that one topped with pesto?
Pesto, that's right. Thank you for reminding me, Katie. I've got too much going on in this old head. Got some pesto right here. It is a basil plus carrot frond pesto. I think I saw a question from one of our registrants of what do I do with carrots and all the fronds that go with it. So you can sub out a lot of different greenery for some of your basil in pesto. And we didn't even use pine nuts. Pine nuts are getting ridiculous in their cost. We have pepitas in here. So you can use whatever seed or nut, or if you need to avoid tree nuts, you could use a seed or you could leave it out. Pesto just means pounded. Don't forget that. So just anything that you can kind of zhuzh up in your food processor or blender, or if you're old school, use a mortar and a pestle. So this has the carrot fronds in it from our carrots that we're going to use in the next couple of dishes. And it's a great addition. You can use fennel fronds, you could use arugula, chard, any kind of green. You could tenderize kale a little bit and use that. I've seen people use all sorts of things in pesto. So don't be afraid to mess with that recipe if you have a basic one. So there's that pesto. And we have, so speaking of, tell you what, I'll do this next. This is the same stuffing that I used in the rollatini. But I put it into some squash blossoms. So if you get these, you're very lucky. But I would say that mostly people who get these grow their own squash. It does not affect your yield whatsoever in your squash production if you take a few of the flowers. Now you are going to be competing with the bees and some beetles, tiny beetles. What you want to do is bring these in. If you get them in the morning, they're not closed up like this. They'll still be a bit open. You want to take out the pistil that's in the middle, and it's going to be a little difficult to do this without tearing since it is so closed. But the pistil is down there in the middle. You want to take out the pistil and rinse these out because you might have some stowaways. And don't worry if you kind of split it like I've done. Most of the filling goes down in this little cup area anyway. I'll demo that real quick. So you're just going to put about a teaspoon or a tablespoon in these. Some of them get quite large, so you can make an appetizer out of one. And then you just take the petals and close it around and then give it a twist. And then you can dip it in whatever kind of bubbly, light batter that you like. So a beer batter, something that is moistened with a seltzer, tempura batter, anything like that. And you just fry it lightly. We've got them right here. I'm going to again use some of my marinara on the bottom. And we'll give that a base. This is a chunky marinara. If you like your smooth, more like the spaghetti sauce you get in a jar, then you could certainly pulverize it a little bit more in a blender. This makes a wonderful appetizer. You can also take the squash blossoms and chop them up into soups or into quesadillas or anything like that. And I'm going to take one of these beautiful little basil tips and put on top there. So that's that same filling that you've got in your recipe. And we have a video on our YouTube channel about how to do that as well, if you want step-by-step instructions. To show you today is a rice filling for stuffing peppers and for making cabbage rolls. There's a lot of cabbage out there. There's starting to be some peppers. Now you're looking at your chili peppers, you're starting to get some green bells. In a week or two, we'll probably start to see your Cubanelles, your tons of banana peppers are out there, poblanos. You'll start to see the frying peppers and then your other colors of the sweet bell peppers very soon. So I thought that would be an overload. And I took some cabbage, some sweet candy onions, more tomato, carrots, chop them up and blanch them. We'll talk about blanching for our freezer demo, and a little bit of everything. And then I have some ground pork that I browned that is from Ryan Burdett. And Katie, do you want to talk about why we want to emphasize Ryan's goods today?
Yes, absolutely. So just a quick heads up that we're offering an in-person Cook with a Farmer class with Ryan in September, on September 13th. So we'll share that out in our follow-up email if you'd like to be in the Food Connection kitchen with Chef Tanya to get your hands on some of these delicious ingredients and check them out. It's always so much fun. We'll have Ryan there with us. He'll be highlighting some of the products and CSA items he grows on his farm and the wide variety of things. So we just wanted to give him a little shout out today, and stay tuned for that in-person class.
Now, when I'm doing a filling like this, you don't have to use ground pork. You could use, my mom used a lot of ground beef. Shout out to Betty for teaching me stuffed peppers. I did blanch these peppers just for a moment to tenderize them a little bit. Sometimes the filling will get done before the pepper will break down. So that starts that cooking process. Again, we're going to show you that blanching process in a moment. A little bit of tomato sauce on top. You can add a little cheese to your filling on this. So there's our stuffed tomatoes. Let me give that a little garnish too. We've got all these lovely fresh herbs coming out right now. Tons of basil. That basil we have in that pesto. My car smelled amazing by the time I got here from the farmer's market. So that's our stuffed peppers. If you keep your tomato sauce plain, then you can make more of your Eastern European, Hungarian kind of sauce. You can add a little paprika, a little dill, maybe even just a touch of cinnamon, and you have these cabbage rolls. Now, again, this is a blanching, shocking process. I'm going to show you how to roll one. I think we have time real quick. So I had a tiny little head of cabbage because, you know, when you get cabbage and you start chopping it, it just grows and grows and grows and grows. So I picked a little head and I took the outer leaves off first. And we blanched those for about 2 minutes each, just until they got tender enough to roll again. And we're going to cut out the hard core part of the cabbage leaf, and we'll just tuck that across it. You can do this also with any kind of hefty green. So collards makes nice rolls as well. I think you're going to see that in our demo with the UK Eat Well dietitian, Vanessa Oliver, next week. We're going to do a spoon of our filling. That's just rice and pork and all of the veggies. Oh, the greens, kale, and 2 types of kale, curly and lacinato kale that we got from Elmwood Stock Farm. I'm sorry, we got those from Lazy 8. I'm getting confused where I got my stuff because it was so much. And then you start tucking in the sides as you roll and put those seams side down into a little bit of tomato sauce. So I'll plate that. And zucchini and squash, and it's abundance right now. We all tend to have that problem every year, don't we? So one thing that you can do is a lot of people make zucchini bread. My mom tends to preserve hers so she can make some sweet zucchini bars that have a really rich frosting on top. But if you're looking for something just a bit more savory, I had these a couple of years ago at someone else's house. You can make a savory zucchini bar. This is a cheddar zucchini bar. You can slice them into half moons. You can grate them and squeeze them out. However you want to do your zucchini, however you want to preserve your zucchini, you can go ahead and do it, portion it out for this recipe. It's just got a little onion, a little cheddar, and then like a biscuit mix. Now we can share the site that I got this recipe from, and it has like a baking mix of flour and salt and leavener, but you could cheat a little bit on that by using a biscuit mix for all your dry ingredients. This is from Weisenberger, just down the road in Midway, Kentucky. Of course, you could use Bisquick or the Crusties or whatever you have around, and you just sub this cup for cup for all your dry ingredients, and it makes it super easy and super fast. And then you just bake them off in a 9x13 pan. If you're a fan of Red Lobster's cheddar biscuits, this will probably appeal to you a lot. And you can also sub out a lot of different vegetables for your zucchini. You could use squash. You could make a mixture. Everybody knows who's seen my classes in the summer before. I'm a huge fan of ratatouille. I bet you could even dry up your ratatouille a little bit, cook it down, and that would be great in those bars. So here's our cabbage rolls. Forgot which one I was on. And I think that's the last of the demos. Correct me if I'm wrong. Before I get to blanching and freezing though, I do want to show you chefs mess up sometimes. I was going to take our rollatini stuffing and stuff a tomato, but I used a Cherokee and I should have known better. But it's what I had around. These beautiful Cherokees from Henkel's Herbs and Heirlooms. And it did, because of the water content of a Cherokee, it just went. So you do need like a firmer tomato if you're going to do this. But basically it's that, I wanted to show you, we used to do these at Holly Hill a lot. So, saute some mushrooms and throw in with this mix, and either just have the baked tomato, or you can do it like a dumpling and put either some puff pastry or some phyllo around it, make it even richer, and serve these as an appetizer. You can also do this with cherry tomatoes if you have that kind of time, but it does make a great appetizer. Okay. So we're going to do a quick blanching and shocking demo. I'm going to do it with green beans. These are some beautiful aromas. These also, let's see, came from Lazy 8, I do believe. Got most of my produce from Lazy 8, Elmwood Stock Farm, Stonehenge Farm, and Henkel's Herbs and Heirlooms, and then of course the pork from Hickory Grove. So I'm just going to tip these. Romas don't really have a string. If you're used to half runners or something like that, they don't really have a string like that. Romas are thicker, flatter ones. You might have seen these canned, but a lot of people are growing them now because they really are a delicious green bean. They're a little bit tougher. So if you're used to tenderettes or something that you can just blanch and then eat, these will take a little bit more cooking time, but they're worth it. I swear, they're super sweet and they just have great flavor and great texture. So we're going to blanch these for a little bit longer than I would like a half runner, and certainly like tenderettes, I only do about 30 seconds to a minute tops. We also have a link to the National Center for Home Preservation. It has tons of guidance on blanching, freezing, canning, drying, fermenting, smoking, and pickling. So you want to check that out. It has tons of guidelines. So I've got my beans ready. Now, whether or not how you break this down is up to you. Frankly, I would probably personally go ahead and chop these up before I blanch them. There's a lot of, most things I tend to go ahead and break down. However, I'm going to end up using it later. The only thing that I don't break down before I blanch it is okra. I blanch okra whole and then chop it because that mitigates some of the more mucilaginous aspects of our okra when you first start slicing it. And once I freeze it, I'm not going to use it whole. I'm going to use it sliced. So that's why I do that for that process. If you have any particular questions about blanching or freezing, let me know. I'm going to turn the camera around. And I've got my boiling water on, and tip to the wise, always go ahead and have your ice bath ready. Don't throw things in and then try to scramble and get it, because every time you won't have enough ice. So go ahead and get your ice bath ready. We're going to drop those in carefully, not splashing any hot water up on us. Now, like I said, the aromas are a little bit tougher, so we're going to leave those in there for a minute to a minute and a half, maybe even 2. And what you're looking for in any case, because sometimes veg can differ even in the same species, is you're looking for a pop of color And you're looking for just a little bit of tenderness to start. You do not want to blanch it till it gets mushy because you're going to cook it further later on. So about 1 to 2 minutes on this. I'm just putting one small batch in at a time. If you put too much in your boiling water at one time, it will bring the temperature down. And then you'll have to wait for it to come back up to a boil. All the while your veg is kind of sitting in that hot water. So it's best to have it at a rolling boil and just put enough in that you can come back up to a boil quickly. So this is a batch process if you have a large amount of vegetables. For greens, I tend to go ahead and stem them. And whether or not you chop them beforehand is up to you. I prefer not to chase those tiny pieces around in my boiling water. So I go ahead and blanch them whole, drain them really well, sometimes even wring them out and then chop them and then freeze them. I'm going to walk over to our noisy freezer over here and grab a bag. We were talking earlier, and this is one of the only things that I don't blanch before I put in the freezer, and that is zucchini. So you can grate it down, you can slice it into really thin slices. If you're going to put larger chunks in the freezer, I would suggest steaming or blanching it. And then just put it in a bag. Again, if you want to measure it out for your favorite recipe, go ahead and do that. I would write that on here. And then press it out flat once you've squeezed it really well, and then freeze just like it is. So this will be perfect for throwing in to that zucchini bar recipe. I just pull it out, let it thaw, and toss it in my recipe. So that's one tip that's what we do at home. That's what my mom does for her zucchini bars is, especially if you can't use it up at once. So look, we've got some color popping on here, and all you need from this point, it's up to you. You could use a wire mesh strainer. We've got slotted spoon. I love these. They're called spiders in commercial kitchens. The round base and the holes, it helps you to get a lot more veg out at one time. And you're not chasing that last little piece around. So you're going to pull those out of the water, let them drain just a bit so you're not dumping so much hot water into your ice bath, and then dunk them in the ice bath. And you hopefully have enough ice in there to stop the cooking process almost immediately. Chef tip for you, if you consistently get gray yolks in your eggs because you're not cooling your eggs down fast enough, you may want to think about an ice bath for your boiled eggs if you can't get them properly cooled down with just some cold running water. All right, so we're going to get all of that out, and I'm dunking it directly into the ice bath. And as I said before, this is a batch process. So you normally, if you have smaller pieces, it does not take too long. Like this is, now I can handle it. It's not that hot. You may want to redistribute the ice a little bit, especially like with big things like big leafy greens, just to make sure that everything is cooling and stopping cooking. And then a little bit of a process is digging all of this out. If you still got ice. Now, if you're done, you can dump this and either let the ice melt or pick your ice out. If you're doing larger, this may be the case for doing larger items just so that you can pull them out of the ice water quicker. And then you just make sure that they're not swimming in water. You're not trying to freeze by making a huge ice cube of veggies. You just want the veggies in there. And the reason why we blanch most everything that goes in is we're going to go ahead and start the breakdown process. Also, blanching will stop any enzymatic processes that could cause your vegetables to break down faster. It helps to start lowering the bacteria growth in your vegetables. And it's a great way to sanitize the outside of your vegetables if you haven't washed them very well. So those are some great reasons to blanch before, and also you're breaking down those cell walls so that the ice crystals won't. That's where you get a lot of your texture changes in freezing, is when the ice crystals break down your cell walls. Water expands as it freezes, so it kind of bursts through all of them, and that's why you get some, most of your veg when you freeze them, then kind of go when you thaw, and that's unfortunate. Then they're pretty much only good for casseroles, soups, things like that. We did have a question from one of the registrants asking if it was better to blanch and freeze vegetables or if they were going to be used in a soup to go ahead and make the soup. I have found that vegetables do better if you go ahead and make your soup and then freeze that soup, because you've cooked them somewhat, you've broken them down. It does seem to be more of a protective process than the blanching and freezing process is, and I get better texture out of my veggies than just freezing the vegetables themselves. So do we have any questions?
Yeah, Chef T, I'm gonna drop in here. We had one question. What is the best way to dry veggies and fruits after blanching? I guess just to kind of like quickly dry it out before they're going to put it into a freezer bag. Do you spread it out on a towel, or what do you like to do?
Yes, so we have great big dish racks that we sanitize and we can use, so it can spread out really well and drip. If you can sort of organize your freezing day really well, then that might be good enough right there. If you feel like there's still a lot of excess moisture on the outside of your vegetables, then yeah, layers of dish towels or paper towels, and just kind of do like a layer or two underneath and a layer or two on top, and just sort of roll it back and forth. And that usually gets rid of a lot of excess moisture. The only thing that would be different would be dark leafy greens and your really watery veg. You may want to squeeze those either with your hands or use cheesecloth, wrap up in cheesecloth or a clean tea towel and squeeze out the excess moisture there.
No, that's a great question. Those are some great tips. And then I'm going to prompt the chat a little bit more. Be thinking, if you have any questions, drop those in. We have till 1 o'clock, and Chef T is a great resource. So feel free if there's anything you have. In terms of best practices, once I've got my veggies blanched, they're dry, they're in the freezer bag, I know you said portion them out for what you want to use, which is a great top tip. And then do you kind of, how long are they good for? Or like, when do you try to use, like how, like how long do you try to, do you have something in your mind? I mean, I know it's interpretive, but.
Interpretive. It also depends on your freezer as well. Like if you've just got a regular fridge top or fridge bottom freezer, you're going to be opening it and closing it a lot. So if that's the case, I would try to use anything frozen in 3 months. Now, if you have a deep freezer or a chest freezer that you're not going to be opening with the same frequency, so it's not going to get all ice crystalled. You've seen what I'm talking about. The ice crystals are all over it because of the temperature changes. Some things are good up to a year. And I think that the National Center for Home Preservation would have a lot of guidance on what you can eat at a particular time. It also depends on what else you have in your freezer. Shrimp can make other things smell like shrimp, and that's not always pleasant. So you want to be careful about what you're mingling in there, because even though I know we think of frozen as this state that nothing changes, but that's not necessarily true. So you want to be careful about what you put together as well.
Yeah, so I think that's a great rule of thumb, right? We want it to still taste really nice and fresh, even if we have frozen it. So 3 to 4 months, or maybe a little bit longer, like you said, if you've got some good conditions. And Vanessa Oliver jumped in and also said we can use a salad spinner to good for drying. Yes. And that's a great tip too. Donna had a question. She wanted to know how to use hot peppers in dishes. Maybe if you got a lot of hot peppers at once in a dish, what you would do just to kind of use those up. Or
yeah, hot peppers are great. I'm a big hot sauce person. So you can make hot sauces that you can just use right away. You can also ferment hot peppers to make really delicious, funky hot sauces. And you can do that. I'm going to step away from the camera for just a minute to check. Don't be intimidated by fermentation. This is all you might need, and you can get a lot of peppers in this. And then you ferment them maybe for like 3 weeks to a month. Experienced fermenters will let some of their peppers go for much, much longer. I don't recommend that, especially if you're first starting out. But this is just a little belled water bell or water crock fermenter. What you do is you put your peppers down in here, with your brine. You fill the moat around, it has a weight to weigh them down and keep them under the surface level of the liquid. And you keep water in the moat, and that is a seal to prevent any bacteria from getting in and also create an anaerobic environment inside. So these are marvelous. They come in all shapes and sizes. I got my nephew one for Christmas a couple of years ago because he also loves hot sauce. So that would use up a great deal of chilies. And don't be afraid of chilies as a flavor element. You can add small chilies or tiny bits of chilies to things, and they don't get hot. So one of my favorite things to do is when I have a habanero, because they have such a wonderful fruity flavor, in addition to a very nice clean heat, is I will throw habaneros in olive oil that I'm preparing to cook greens in. I won't leave it in. I don't want the heat from it. I want the background flavor. So I kind of infuse my olive oil with it. They're also great to toss into soups. And so if you're using one or two in soups, again, you get that background flavor without the heat, if that's what you're trying to avoid. Otherwise, one of my best friends, who's also a chef, she made a wonderful poblano soup and used a lot of poblanos. And those are kind of like, normally they're kind of on the border. They're not very hot, but I don't know. The ones she had must have gotten cross. There was a hybrid somehow. They were hot poblanos, but it was an excellent soup. So you may want to look at some of those kinds of things. You can also do look to South Asian recipes and look at chili pickles. They're a wonderful condiment. You can them; they'll last for over a year, and that would be a great way to use up some hot peppers.
Yeah, those are some great tips. And we had a question come through just about where you might get a fermenter container like the one that you have. Where would you steer people towards?
I got this online, and the ones that I buy personally, I get online. You can also check out, we order things for the kitchen here from Webstaurant Store, and so they have a wide variety. There is a restaurant supply store here in Lexington. If you are a Lexington resident, called Seaworth, it might be worth checking them out. And then a lot of your nicer home goods stores, especially those that are very kitchen foodie based, tend to have at least one kind of crock. I'm going to step away, and I've still got stuff in the oven. So let me go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I'll just let you know, it looks like we are almost at time. So thanks everyone for joining us. If you need to hop off right at 1, we're going to drop in an event survey. We would love to get your feedback about what you thought of this demo. If you have suggestions for other ones, we're going to offer a CSA cookbook giveaway as an incentive to complete that survey. So definitely check out. Please give us your feedback, take that survey. I'll get in touch with someone at the end of the week and pick a winner for the survey. So we really appreciate it. And then just we can always hang out for just a moment more if folks have other questions. I know we had some other hot pepper questions, so I'll try to ask those if folks can hang on. But just want to mention, we'll share a lot of recipes and resources as follow-ups. We dropped a lot of stuff into the chat. Don't worry. When we jump off the Zoom meeting, I'll make sure to follow up with the recording as well as these recipe resources, and maybe even a link to the fermenter that Chef T showed. And if Chef T showed off, if you're trying to make some fermented hot sauce. I know we had someone drop in an Amazon option, which is great. Thank you so much, Sarah. And yeah, and just super quickly, we really didn't talk about fermentation or pickling too much, right? We really highlighted that freezing techniques. If anyone has questions about, pickling, we're going to drop in some resources, share some resources on home canning. We've got a quick pickle recipe that we'll share with you. What other things would you maybe recommend for beginners trying to ferment or maybe trying to pickle, or just any, what are those entry-level veggies to kind of experiment with?
Well, I think I also saw someone ask about when they were entering what to do with all these cucumbers, and quick pickle is the immediate solution that will extend the shelf life of anything. You can quick pickle anything, and I'm a big pickle fan as well. So I recommend a quick pickle. And those are in Joy of Cooking. Any of your basic cookbooks will have some kind of pickling liquid recipe, and you just trim and throw your veg in a jar and then either heat or just pour on a vinegar, sugar, salt, some kind of flavorings, make sure, and there you go. and you're extending your shelf life like 3 weeks, maybe even 4, depends on the vegetable and the state it's in when you put it in there. For actual fermenting pickling, again, cucumbers would be great to start with. And for fermenting in a crock, I would suggest cabbage, putting crab down. It's cabbage and salt. That's it. So now when you buy commercial cabbage, that's been they've added vinegar to that to give you that tanginess. But when you are fermenting it yourself, it is the anaerobic bacteria that are breaking down the starches in the cabbage that make that sort of wang that you love about kraut. And you can make kraut out of other greens as well. It can bring out that bitterness, but if you're looking to use up some other greens, that you can ferment them. And then a personal favorite of chefs a lot of times is kimchi. So if you've gotten, and sometimes it happens, it's happened to me, to get an influx of bok choy or a Napa cabbage or something like that. Kimchi is great for using that up. It is super flavorful. There are tons of like family recipes out there that you can use. It's a bit more of an involved process. It has more ingredients. But again, once you've made it, you can throw it in the fridge and just use it for a very long time because of that fermentation process. And it's also just delicious. And again, you can customize it the way you like it. Like I like a really heavy garlic, funky dried shrimp and Asian pear kind of kimchi with quite a bit of heat. So you can customize it to make it the way you want. Those are some great projects to start out with, but really fermentation can run the gamut. And it's fascinating. It's just a fascinating process. I think I am the nerd in me geeks out on it and is fascinated by it. So I don't overlook it. And sometimes it's just as simple. Like if you don't have a crock, you don't have to use a crock. You can use a quart jar with a weight. They make weights just for quart jars with burpable tops. Because you do have to burp your ferment sometimes. And when we were doing things in large batches in the restaurants, we would use really clean 5-gallon buckets with plates to weigh everything down and keep it below the liquid level. I mean, you can improvise, and there are a lot of resources online. People love talking about fermentation.
Yeah, well, this is a great place to get started with that. And thanks for letting us know you don't have to do it with like, super specific. You can do it with some things that you have at home if you need to. But thank you guys so much for staying on after time. Please do take our event survey when you jump off. I'll make sure to include that in a follow-up email. Thank you, Chef T, so much for your time today. And just want to let everyone know that's still with us that we will have another virtual demo in August, back to school CSA tips. So just if you're looking for healthy lunches, you want healthy lunches for yourself, healthy lunches for your family members, for kiddos going back to school, we'll kind of highlight some easy, quick ways to get some veggies in during lunchtime. So make sure to check that out. We'll send a link to register for that one as well. But thanks everybody for tuning in today. We really appreciate it. And just feel free to share some love in the chat for Chef T or do a little reaction. Just thanks so much for all of your time today. Always a wealth of knowledge.